Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly rested after a full night of sleep? When was the last time you woke up and your joints didn't ache before you even got out of bed? When was the last morning you looked in the mirror and thought, I actually feel good today? If you're over 60, there's a very good chance that feeling has become harder and harder to reach. And what most people never suspect is that the one thing standing between them and that feeling might be sitting in their kitchen cabinet right now. It might be in the coffee on their counter, the bread on their table, the yogurt they eat every morning thinking it's healthy. And the worst part is, most seniors are consuming it in amounts that silently damage their body every single day without ever knowing it. We're talking about sugar, but not in the way you've been warned about before. What I'm going to share with you today goes far beyond cavities and blood sugar spikes. What happens inside your body, inside your brain, your joints, your heart, your skin, your immune system, when you cut sugar out for just 30 days after the age of 60, is something that will completely change the way you think about what you eat. So stay with me, because the information coming up in just a few minutes could genuinely add years to your life. My name is associated with this channel for a reason. At Dr. Silas Redford Wellness, we believe that real health after 60 isn't about extreme diets or impossible routines. It's about understanding what your body is actually telling you and making small, powerful shifts that create real change. If you're new here and you want honest, research-backed health guidance made specifically for people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, please consider hitting that subscribe button and giving this video a like. It genuinely helps us keep sharing this kind of information with people who need it most. Now, let's talk about what sugar is actually doing to a body that's over 60 years old. Here's what most people don't realize. The human body handles sugar very differently at 60 than it did at 30. The enzymes responsible for breaking down sugar slow down. The pancreas, which produces insulin to manage blood sugar, becomes less efficient with age. The cells themselves become more resistant to insulin signals. This is a biological shift that happens gradually, quietly, invisibly. And the dangerous part is that the amount of sugar that your body could once handle without much consequence now creates an entirely different set of reactions. Reactions that most doctors never fully explain during a routine checkup. Think about someone like Margaret. She's 68 years old, retired, active in her church community, takes her medications faithfully. But for the past 3 years, she's been dealing with something she couldn't quite name, a heaviness in her legs every afternoon, a kind of foggy feeling in her head that makes conversations harder to follow, joint pain in her hands that seem to come and go without explanation. She'd been to her doctor. Her blood pressure was fine. Her cholesterol was managed, but something still felt off. She'd been told to watch her diet, but no one had sat down and explained specifically what was happening inside her body every time she ate the way she'd always eaten. What happened when Margaret cut sugar out for 30 days? Even she didn't expect it, and we'll get to exactly what changed for her in just a moment. But first, let's establish something important. When we say cut out sugar, we are not talking about an extreme overnight transformation that feels like punishment. We're talking about a deliberate, intentional 30-day period where you minimize added sugars, the kind found in processed foods, sweetened drinks, condiments, white bread, pastries, flavored yogurts, and even so-called health foods that hide sugar under names like dextrose, maltose, high fructose corn syrup, and cane juice. The average American senior consumes somewhere between 17 and 20 teaspoons of added sugar every single day. The recommended amount for someone over 60, no more than 6 teaspoons for women, 9 for men. Do the math. Most seniors are consuming 2 to 3 times the safe limit without even realizing it. And here's what that excess sugar is doing inside the body. Slowly, steadily, and in ways that look like other problems. By day 3 of cutting out sugar, something begins to shift inside your body. It's not comfortable at first, and that discomfort is actually a sign that something is changing. You may feel a craving that feels almost desperate, a headache behind your eyes, a strange, low-energy feeling in the afternoon. What doctors rarely explain is that this is your body going through a mild withdrawal. Sugar, when consumed regularly and in excess, creates a neurological response in the brain that is similar, not identical, but similar, to other addictive substances. The dopamine system lights up. The brain expects the reward, and when the reward doesn't come, it signals distress. But here's what happens just a few days after that initial discomfort passes. Around day 5 to 7, something begins to settle in the body. People often describe it as a kind of lifting, a clearing, like static being removed from a radio signal. The energy that used to spike and crash during the day begins to stabilize. Instead of feeling sharp at 9 in the morning and completely drained by 2 in the afternoon, the energy curve starts to flatten into something steadier, more reliable, more human. For seniors specifically, this stabilization of energy is not a small thing. It directly affects mood, it directly affects cognitive clarity, and it directly affects the inflammatory processes happening in joints, muscles, and connective tissue throughout the body. Let me explain what sugar does to inflammation, because this is the part that most people have never had clearly explained to them. Inflammation is your immune system's natural response to threats. In small amounts, it heals you. It fights infection. It repairs tissue. But when the body is exposed to high levels of sugar consistently over time, something called chronic low-grade inflammation develops. It's not the dramatic swelling you'd see from a sprained ankle. It's quiet. It's internal. It affects the lining of blood vessels. It affects the joints. It affects the brain. When researchers studied the relationship between sugar intake and inflammatory markers in older adults, what they found shocked many in the medical community. Seniors who reduced their sugar intake significantly, even over just 30 days, showed measurable reductions in C-reactive protein, which is one of the key markers doctors use to measure systemic inflammation. This matters because elevated C-reactive protein has been directly linked to arthritis pain, cardiovascular disease risk, and even cognitive decline. Margaret, the woman we mentioned earlier, by week 2 of her 30-day experiment, the heaviness in her legs had begun to ease. She noticed it first in the mornings. Getting out of bed felt less like climbing a mountain. She wasn't sure if it was the sugar or something else, so she kept going. And by day 21, the brain fog she'd been living with for 3 years, the foggy, underwater feeling that made her feel like she was watching her own life through a frosted window, had noticeably cleared. She could follow conversations at her church group without losing the thread. She could read for longer periods without losing focus. She called her daughter and told her something felt different, something felt better. Now, this is where it gets even more important, because there's something happening inside the brain during a low sugar period that most people never hear about. The brain runs primarily on glucose. That's true. But what's also true, and what most doctors rarely explain, is that the brain functions best when glucose is delivered steadily and consistently from complex carbohydrates, not in rapid, massive surges from refined sugars. When sugar floods the system quickly, insulin spikes, glucose plummets, and the brain receives a signal of scarcity and stress. Over time, over years and decades of this cycle, the brain's insulin sensitivity decreases. And recent research has started calling Alzheimer's disease, in some circles, type 3 diabetes, because of the deep connection between insulin resistance in the brain and cognitive decline. That is not meant to frighten you. That is meant to empower you. Because if the connection runs that deep, it also means that improving insulin sensitivity through dietary change, including reducing sugar, can genuinely protect the brain in ways that no pill currently can. Stay with me, because what happens to the heart during these 30 days is something you absolutely need to hear. Most people associate heart health with fat intake. They've been told to watch their cholesterol, reduce saturated fat, take their statins. And while cholesterol matters, there is now overwhelming evidence that sugar plays a far more destructive role in cardiovascular disease than fat ever did. Sugar raises triglycerides, a type of fat in the blood that damages arteries. It raises blood pressure by stiffening the blood vessel walls. It promotes the formation of small, dense LDL cholesterol particles, the dangerous kind that burrow into arterial walls and trigger plaque buildup. When seniors reduce their sugar intake significantly for 30 days, multiple studies have shown measurable improvements in triglyceride levels, improvements in blood pressure readings, and improvements in overall arterial flexibility. These are not small changes. These are the kinds of changes that directly reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke. There's something else happening during these 30 days that most people don't expect, something that shows up not just on the inside but on the outside: skin. Collagen is the protein that gives your skin its structure, its firmness, its elasticity. As you age, collagen production naturally slows. But what accelerates collagen breakdown far beyond natural aging is a process called glycation. Glycation happens when sugar molecules bind to collagen proteins in the skin and damage their structure. The result is sagging, wrinkling, and a dullness to the complexion that no cream can fully reverse. When you cut out excess sugar for 30 days, you slow that glycation process significantly. And many seniors report, with genuine surprise, that by the end of the 30 days, their skin appears clearer, firmer, and more vibrant, not because of any product, simply because the internal damage process was interrupted. Harold, a 72-year-old former teacher from Ohio, decided to cut sugar for 30 days after watching a health segment on television. He wasn't expecting much. He figured he'd feel a little better and maybe lose a pound or two. What he didn't expect was that his wife would look at him at day 25 and say, "Your face looks different. You look younger." He hadn't changed anything else. Same sleep schedule, same walking routine, same medications. He'd simply removed the hidden sugars from his diet. Now let's talk about weight, because this matters deeply to seniors, and not just for appearance. Excess weight in seniors is directly tied to joint strain, breathing difficulty, sleep quality, and cardiovascular stress. What many seniors don't realize is that sugar is one of the primary drivers of weight gain in the body, not because of calories alone, but because of how insulin responds to sugar. When insulin is chronically elevated, the body is essentially in fat storage mode. It cannot effectively burn fat for energy because insulin is telling it to store, not release. When sugar is significantly reduced, insulin levels stabilize. The body begins to access its fat stores more efficiently, and the weight that had seemed immovable, the weight that resisted walking and medication and calorie counting, begins to slowly, steadily release. This is not a magic solution. This is basic physiology that the medical system often doesn't take the time to explain in a way that seniors can actually act on. There's one more area we need to cover, and it might be the most important of all, for seniors specifically: sleep. Poor sleep is one of the most common complaints among people over 60. Trouble falling asleep, waking multiple times during the night, feeling unrested even after 7 or 8 hours. And what most people don't connect, because no one connects it for them, is that high sugar intake directly disrupts sleep quality. Here's how. Sugar raises cortisol levels. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It is supposed to be highest in the morning and lowest at night, signaling to the body that it's time to rest. But when blood sugar spikes and crashes throughout the day, cortisol gets thrown into an irregular pattern. It rises when it should fall, and the result is a brain that simply cannot settle into deep, restorative sleep. Within 2 to 3 weeks of reducing sugar significantly, many seniors report dramatic improvements in sleep, falling asleep faster, sleeping through the night, waking with a sense of actual rest. And that improvement in sleep cascades into everything else: energy, mood, cognitive function, immune strength, and pain levels. There is a beautiful and deeply human story happening inside the body every time you make a better choice. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require suffering. It simply requires intention and a willingness to take what you know now and act on it. If you are 60 or older and you have been living with unexplained fatigue, with joint pain that comes and goes, with brain fog, with poor sleep, with weight that won't move, with a general feeling that you should feel better than you do, please consider giving your body 30 days. Just 30 days of removing the hidden sugars from your daily life. Read the labels of the foods you eat most often. Look for added sugars in places you'd never expect: pasta sauce, salad dressing, crackers, instant oatmeal, flavored waters, protein bars. Swap sweetened drinks for water, herbal tea, or sparkling water with a slice of lemon. Choose whole fruits over fruit juice. Cook more meals from whole ingredients where you control what goes in. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to begin. Margaret completed her 30 days. She told her daughter afterward that it was the first time in years she'd felt like herself. Not a younger version of herself, just herself. Present, clear, comfortable in her own body. Harold texted his son a photo of himself at day 30 with a big smile. He'd lost 8 pounds. His morning stiffness was almost gone. He was sleeping 7 solid hours for the first time in 4 years. These aren't extraordinary people. They're ordinary people who made one courageous decision, and that decision changed the trajectory of how they felt, and likely how long they'd feel that way. You have that same decision available to you right now. Your body is not beyond help. It is not too old to respond. Biology does not abandon you at 60 or 70 or 80. It adapts, it heals, it responds when you give it what it needs and remove what is quietly harming it. At Dr. Silas Redford Wellness, we believe that the most powerful medicine for seniors isn't found in a prescription bottle. It's found in understanding, in knowing what's happening inside your body and why. And today, you have something most people never get: a clear picture of what 30 days of change could do for you. If this video gave you something to think about, or better yet, something to act on, please leave a comment below. Tell us, Are you going to try 30 days? Have you already reduced sugar and noticed a difference? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to take that first step. This community is built on real people sharing real experiences, and that matters more than you know. Please share this video with someone you care about, a spouse, a sibling, a friend who's been struggling with their health and doesn't know where to start. Sometimes the most generous thing we can do is pass along the right information at the right time. Thank you for spending this time here. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, every great change begins with a single decision. Make yours today.